Hello, welcome to Cinema Savvy. We are here today to give our spoiler-free review on A Quiet Place 2, which is the sequel to A Quiet Place 1. Like, what do you want me to say? This was obviously scheduled to come out last year. This, like many films, has been delayed due to COVID. We were very fortunate to get an early screener yesterday. Not the earliest screener, I do want to stress. I think this has been out on a screener for about a week or two now at this point. But we took the trip down to London. It was good fun. It was nice to see, again, I think we're going to say this for at least the first few months, new film again in the cinema environment. And we're here today to talk about it, as I just mentioned. Because this doesn't have its official release just yet. We are going to keep this spoiler free, so a lot of what we're going to say is probably going to be very vague. So do bear with us, but we want you to experience this when it's properly released. So we're not going to give away any pivotal plot points into it, but we are going to try and cover the bases as usual and have sort of like an open discussion on the film. But before we do, over to George with the socials.
Absolutely, guys. So you wouldn't have seen this. Some of you may have seen this, so don't comment anything if you have seen it. But let us know your thoughts on the first one. We did do a review for it the other day, but if you're looking forward to this or if you've got tickets booked, because this is having a very interesting release here in the UK. There are early screenings on Friday at Cineworld, and on the 31st bank holiday, there are screenings around the country, and then it's in the cinemas from Thursday onwards, so not too long to wait now. But we'll get into some of that stuff nearer the end. But obviously, we'll get into the whole cinema experience too, because I think it plays a very big part of this film. However, as we said, if you're new to the series, to the channel, do hit the like button, do subscribe. We've got a lot more new reviews on the way. The first of many actual. I think this is the first one because of the spiral issues. This is the first review for a film in the cinemas, right? I don't think Kong v Godzilla counts. We have to watch it at home, but this is obviously, we're going to go over the socials. If you are new, Facebook at Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy, letterboxd.com/Cinema Savvy. Links to public in the description below. And big news today. Amazon's bought MGM. We're going to be back streaming at 9 o'clock tonight with a little roundtable discussion on that one. I don't think it's going to be a bombardment hour and a half thing, maybe 40 minutes to an hour, but we're going to be discussing some of the stuff that's gone down because that's probably going to be one of the biggest news stories of the next few years. I think there's going to be big repercussions on whatnot. So if you're curious about some of the future film, do check that out live at 9 o'clock, still on the same channel. But no, we're here to talk about The Quiet Place Part 2. Quick comment from Carvo. He's watching on Friday thanks to Cineworld Unlimited.
Nice.
Absolutely. I definitely enjoy the cinema for it. And that's what I would say for that. And I would have loved to have seen it early, but we already kind of did. What I meant to say was I'd love to have seen 1 and 2 together early.
Yes.
Which was the plan pre-coronavirus, but it's very weird to get. I think this was delayed 3 times, and then it was originally going to come out in September this year, and then about a month ago they said no, end of May now. As soon as Fast and Furious moved, they put this to the end of May. I think it's one of the big weekends in America this week, so a lot of people are expecting cinema attendances for this from Cruella. So it's going to be very interesting on Monday, seeing those box office stats for 2 big tentpole releases. However, really quickly, for those that didn't catch our video on Monday night, really briefly, Chris, thoughts on the first one?
I really enjoyed it. So I didn't see it when it first came out at the cinema. I saw it much later, not knowing at the time of that film that it was going to get a sequel. I think my only problem with that film really was the very abrupt ending. Now we live in a world where part 2 is a thing. This is a direct sequel as well. I do want to say that part 2 literally picks up right from where the end of part 1 ended. But I thought it was a really interesting premise. I thought that the direction, from John Krasinski, who returns to direct this second one as well, it was great tension building. The use of sound or the lack of sound was really intriguing. I wasn't too keen on the design of the actual monsters in the film. And I wouldn't even call it a horror film. I guess it has sort of like horror aspects to it, but I think last time you said it's more of a thriller film, and I stand by that as well. But for a first film, like an original concept as well, I thought it was really intriguing. Not necessarily one that I thought would sort of like spawn an entire franchise, which, we'll talk about the future plans of this, what will probably become a franchise at some point. But as a standalone film, I thought it was really intriguing, done on a very small budget, and it was well directed, well acted, well scripted for the small amount of dialogue that's in the film. It all just came together for it. I thought it was a really solid standalone film.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. As obviously I was new to it on Monday, it was very new to it, and I really enjoyed it. I'm the same as you. I don't see it as horror. A lot of people will, which is fine. But this is more to me very much psychological, edge of the seat. It's playing with you up there, maybe more so than out loud. And although trying to get one of my sisters to watch it, she goes, "So it's just a horror film." And I explained the plot. It was like, they're on a farm and they can't make a noise or they get killed by monsters. But no, I thought it was amazing. I thought the direction was superb. I really enjoyed the cast. As not an ensemble, but as a family, you've got 4 good actors as well, which is very rare. Normally, there's always a standout for maybe the wrong reason and whatnot, but fantastically cast and well-directed film, and left me wanting more, knowing full well I was going to be getting more because, of course, we land on Quiet Place Part 2. We need to talk about the plot for this. We obviously, as we said, we're doing spoilers, but as Chris said, this one picks up very much where the first one is left off. What would you say? I haven't got IMDb up. I would say this is following the Abbott family after the aftermath of the first film. That would be if I was the marketing distribution. That's as simple as I'm going to make it.
Well, let's see if IMDb keeps it just as simple as that. We've got following the events at home, the Abbott family now face the terrors of the outside world. Forced to venture into the unknown, they realize the creatures that hunt by sound are not the only threats lurking beyond the sand path. Ooh, we have intrigue. And we have new cast members in this as well. I guess if we go into our thoughts on the cast as well, you obviously have your returning or surviving cast from the first film. I guess we can spoil the first one, at least. Krasinski didn't make it out alive in that film. So as you can see from the poster, we have Emily Blunt, and I need to bring up the names of the other actors. Noah Jupe as the son, and Millicent Simmons, as the daughter, who I thought was easily one of the standouts from the first film. I'd actually go so far as to say that Millicent is the kind of the main lead in this film in many ways. Emily Blunt's still fantastic as always, sort of like the matriarch now at the loss of her husband. She's having to try and step up as that mother and leader, like father-like figure as well. So there's a lot of pressure on her character. And I feel like I'm sort of like quoting Carrie Fisher with this. It's about family, and that's what's so special about it. But it really is. It really sort of like maintains that family dynamic to it, and just, you know, their need to survive and her need to protect her children. But with this one as well, and what I liked in this continuation is that you see the siblings, the daughter and the son, having to step up themselves and sort of like conquer their own fears. And although they're still kids, you know, they've got to age up pretty quickly in this horrific world that they found themselves in. And I love that. And not to go into spoilers, but there's some beautiful, like even in choices of the editing and the parallel between the two siblings was what I thought was the most fascinating thing about this film. And Millicent's just fantastic in this film. Again, I'd say even a step up from the first film. And I think that was Krasinski's idea as well, very early on when he was coming up with the idea for this, is that he wanted to make her the lead of the film, and she absolutely is.
And I think that's what's a really good thing with it, is that if you look at this, it was certainly the first film, Krasinski is the lead, and obviously Emily Blunt is also a lead, but there is a bigger storyline at stake with the daughter losing the younger brother and what she thought her dad thought of her. And that's, to me, the big emotional connection in that first film, is the father-daughter relationship. And with him out the picture, I think would have been a crying shame to have just focused on Emily Blunt and had the other two as very much supporting characters. But we kind of see the pair of them be their own leads in their own way, and that's as ambiguous I can leave that. And I think they each stood their own. Noah Jupe, obviously, between these films, has done Ford versus Ferrari. He's been in Honey Boy. He's been superb in both of those. And I think they're all quality. It's really unfair to sort of pick one out, but the pair of them together are so different as siblings. It doesn't feel like you're watching the same character twice. They're two different performances. I think he has an incredible physical performance, Noah Jupe. I mean, that sounds silly, like talking about them screaming and stuff, but when he is in peril, it doesn't feel like kid pointing at this like green stick on a wall that we're going to make an alien. You feel like, oh my god, like that is acting, and he's so young and so talented as well. And with Millicent as well, the fact that she is deaf as well. Obviously, the ending of the first film, we know that they've got the weapon now. She needs to have this primary role to be in this escalator role, because it's ultimately her importance that she is the key to beating these, not people, obviously these creatures. So I loved what they do with them in the story. And I think this kind of leads into one of my sort of biggest things with this, is that this is all about world building for me. I hadn't seen the trailers. I'd seen the first couple of seconds. And at cinema, I'd always put my head down because I hadn't seen it. But I'm a massive fan of The Last of Us, and this parallel is going to be there. I love that post-apocalyptic world, but it's not like, oh, you know, it's scorched earth or that kind of thing. I just love the sort of the run-down visuals, the no one's been here for years aesthetic. I know it's only been 500 days, but I just love what they can do with environments, what they can do with sets. And I think for a small film, sort of the first one had one set, essentially pretty much the farm and the shop at the beginning. In this one, we get the town, we get new locations, we get loads of different places, but it doesn't feel like we're going to throw out too much. And you know how some sequels will take you on a tour of the world and be like, look at all the amazing places I'm going to. This one was sort of, maybe there's 5 or 6 locations, but every single one of these looks like they've been abandoned or isolated or something's happened for this sort of year person. For me, heading into a sequel, one of the really big things I wanted to see was that world building, to see, you know, you mentioned in that the synopsis going past the sand line. I was so excited to see what was past that, because we know there's aliens, but I want to see the societies and all that kind of thing. And I think that's where Cillian Murphy comes into it, as you can tell by the posters. He's bearded up, he's got the cap, he's very much a survivor that's not been with them. And I'd say he's one of the more interesting characters in the film. I think all 4 are fascinating, but to bring in a new character in a sort of family-driven film and him not be this, I'd say like an isolated support character. You know, when a sequel brings on someone new and they're always going to be secondary. I'm not going to be horrible and say Lando, but Empire Strikes Back, love Lando, but to me, he has always been like a secondary character.
Yeah.
Whereas Cillian Murphy in this, you know, I was like, oh, it's brave of them to put him that big on the poster, but you watch the film and think, no, he is a lead character with them. And I think that's what I loved about him, was that his performance was superb, but the character of Emmett was written, I think, a lot better than I thought it would be. I think he's very ambiguous. That's obviously a spoiler free, I can make it. And I think he's one of those characters that is a worthy place. And I'm going to sit here on my throne and shout, I want him to play David in The Last of Us, which won't happen because it'd be way too similar to this. Not in character terms, just a post-apocalyptic beard film.
Yeah, just before I talk about Cillian Murphy, I want to go back to what you mentioned about The Last of Us. This film looks amazing. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of sort of like dreary post-apocalyptic imagery in the film, but the locations and the sets and the things that they build, whether it be a wrecked train or a kind of dilapidated factory, everything, you believe you are situated in this world. And, you know, that's testament to the cinematographers as well that have managed to cover these landscapes. And similar to the first film, although they've gone sort of, you know, off the beaten track with this one, they've left home, which is a big thing. They're now in the wilderness. There are sort of limited locations, again, similar to that smaller scale sort of film that was put across by Krasinski within the first one, keeping it more or less at home. This one, yes, they are out in the open, but you kind of have the factory, and then there's like a couple of other locations. There's more than the first film, but it still felt very, you know, self-contained, even down to the cast as well. They are introducing new characters, but they're not going completely OTT and just, you know, character bloat. It's still a very restrained cast, which I really appreciated. And going to Cillian Murphy, I really liked him in this. I mean, Cillian Murphy is always solid. He's a phenomenal actor. He's brilliant. But Cillian Murphy is always famous for playing either a villain or a very sort of like psychologically damaged kind of character, or a character that's got a lot of intrigue to them. And I feel like they were built, again, not giving anything away with this one. It felt like they were building up to a lot of intrigue with this character. There's a revelation which feels like it's going to be paid off, and it never really is. You always get this kind of unsettling quality to him, but I felt like they could have doubled down on that a lot more and really got into the psychology of the character. Similar to, we've been talking about War of the Worlds recently with the 4K Steelbook coming out from Zavi, but Tim Robbins' character in that film, I wanted to see them go more into a kind of character like that that's been on his own for so long, and all the kind of messed up things that can happen to a person when they're on their own. And they didn't really go that far, and I thought that was kind of a missed opportunity. I'd have liked to sort of like delve more into his character. He's good, he's solid, as you said, like he is very much a lead, which I was surprised about. I know that he's second build, he's on the poster, but you never know with these kind of films. Like he could come into it very late in the game, but he's introduced very early on, and you know he's there to stay with it. So you know, he's in the majority of the film. So I liked him. I was fascinated by his character. I guess that's a positive. Yeah. I was fascinated by his character. Just kind of wish they'd have gone the extra mile and developed him a little bit more. Maybe with a slightly longer running time, because this one was still only an hour and 40, I think, wasn't it? 10 minutes longer than the previous film, but even so, relatively short compared to a lot of films that come out nowadays.
Yeah, I think timing is actually a really good point for the next bit as well, is that a key part of talking about this film is obviously the sound. Tension, and I guess this all comes under the direction, the whole concept of the film, actually, in truth. But again, how many sequels come out? Let's just slap another hour on it. People liked it, let's do another 40-50 minutes of it. And you know, it can work, of course, for many films, and it does work for many films, but when I saw the runtime was 1:04, I was like, perfect. It's like, if this was 2.5 hours, I don't think I could cope. I mean, I could obviously sit in a silence, be on the edge of my seat for 2.5 hours, but that such a vast jump for such a small scale project, I think wouldn't have worked for it.
And I think it's similar to Dunkirk as well, also starring Cillian Murphy.
Yeah.
But to maintain that tension, I think you can only do that for a certain amount of time before it kind of gets tiresome, or you're not as invested as you would be with a shorter runtime, maybe, of a film.
Yeah, no, that's a really good comparison, actually. It's exactly that. It is building up that, there's only, if you've kept someone on the edge of the seat for an hour and a half and there's another hour, they're just gonna drop off. Mm-hmm. And then you'll miss it when they need it. Whereas if you know you're going for a shorter experience, you're just going to be in and out in a plan. And that's their goal with it. And I think that's where the credit comes down to, that they could have gone bigger, broader, but they didn't. They kept a very small scale story, telling it in several locations, rather than, let's have a game of COD Zombies where we're going to have hundreds and hundreds of monsters run at them at the farm and do that for an hour and a half. And I'm so glad of the creative decisions they made to sort of move the plot onwards. And also worth mentioning, obviously in the trailer, I won't delve into this too much, but we do get a prequel moment, the very origin of the, what would you call it, an invasion? Or the part of the apocalypse? I don't know what you call it.
I guess it is an invasion. What I do appreciate with this, though, because I knew that they were going to go back to day one of the attack, essentially. And we mentioned this in the first review that we did, was that when you move into sequel territory, do you start over-explaining things? Do you sort of take away from the mystery? There's a vague explanation as to where these things came from, but they don't go an absurd amount of details. They still do very much keep it ambiguous. You get sort of like an origin point, but you don't need more information from that. So I do appreciate, the screenwriters for that, and I guess Krasinski's direction, that they didn't feel the need to over-explain and go into infinitesimal detail as to the whole backstory, because I think that takes away from horror films. Another comparison, you've got the original Alien film. You don't need to know everything. You don't need to know what that space jockey is. You don't need to know where those eggs come from. What's important is that there's this weird spaceship with these weird things in there, and then bad stuff starts happening. But then obviously you get stuff like Prometheus, Alien Covenant, that go all the way to like the dawn of time and explain everything. And I feel like that sometimes takes away from the enigma and the mystery of a horror film, thriller film. So I was pleased to see that they didn't go in ridiculous amounts of detail with the creatures in this one.
Yeah, and it still leaves an, I don't know if this is a criticism, because I'm not scared of them. I think the way they integrate them in the film is really good, because I've always said of horror films, my problem is that I don't get scared often, and that's why I don't call this into horror. I think this is a very good psychological thriller. They don't just, like, as I said earlier, they could have put hundreds in. I'd say there's maybe 7 or 8 in this film total of those creatures, and I think that builds up again to that, less is more. And we knew in the first film there were 3 of them, and it's very much setting up it's like Alien and Aliens. Aliens worked beautifully. That's a terrible comparison to use because that was so well done. But no horror films, and again, having hundreds and hundreds more of them just doesn't work as a logic. But this one, you were introduced to newer people. I almost said something, but there are, as we kind of spoke before we hit record, there are groups of people who don't get development, which I think is something we both like to have seen a little bit more.
Yeah,
that come in 2 points to the film, one in the middle, one to the latter part. And I think it's that world building. Who are these people? And sometimes you can be like, okay, maybe I didn't need to know them. But then you also think, I'd have been intrigued to see what this was about, and what was it leading towards. So I did get a couple of those moments, which is sort of the stuff I'd have liked to have seen more of. Maybe that's kind of spoiled, that if you'd have took 10 minutes to learn someone, do you lose that 1 hour 40? Do you get an extended origin and think, oh, well, why are they waffling for? Like, this isn't part of the story. I don't know. So I'm going to kind of leave it and be on Krasinski's side, that I think that paid off at the moment. I am going to add, which I'm sure we'll bring up again in a bit, a spin-off film is in development, due out next year, announced at the end of last year. I don't think at the moment these films should have a spin-off, but I'm just sat here thinking, aren't they on 8 Conjuring films now? So I'd rather they didn't, but at the same time...
how many of those are good, though? That's the thing.
I've seen the first one. That's all I can tell.
2 of them maybe are any good. I'm worried about this now, but I guess it shouldn't come to any surprise with me. Any movie studio does this. If you do a film on a very small budget and it makes a lot of money, It gathers a lot of followers. You get a sequel going, which is probably going to make a lot of money as well. You rush spin-offs out, you rush more sequels out, and that's exactly what we're getting. They're running in tandem a Quiet Place Part 3, or at least there's ideas for a Part 3. I think Emily Blunt said what she's heard from her husband. And the spin-off as well. And I just think it's going to be too much, because what I will say about this film, and I do really like this film, but this is just the natural progression of all sequels. You have a first film that comes out that's a really unique premise, and you haven't seen anything like it before, and it's really good with attention. It establishes the threat and you're with it for that first film. When you get to the second film, you know the rules of this world. You know what the creatures look like. You know what they have to do to survive the creatures and to evade them. So there is a law of diminishing returns, I think, when you get into horror sequels. They're very, very difficult to do and to do well. You either go, as you mentioned, like Alien to Aliens, where you just add hundreds more of them and it becomes more of an action film. But even then, Alien 1 is very much a horror film, like a survival / a horror film. But then when you add more into the mix, it becomes something completely different. And there might be horror elements still to Aliens, but it's very much more action orientated, and you're just watching them. You just want to see them kill all of the xenomorphs, essentially, when you get to that second film. So I'll give credit to this, that it does maintain that sort of thriller, tense tone from the first film, but it did feel slightly diluted. I don't think it sort of like scared me or got me on as edge as the first film did when I first saw that for the first time.
No, I understand that. I'm kind of in the same. I wasn't sort of too. I think I got a couple of jump scares, if that. I'm not going to say I didn't get any, and I do think it's done well. But I think because I'm a sucker for that world building, and obviously as I keep mentioning The Last of Us, I get obsessed with stuff like that. That's where I think I'd probably say. I don't know if this is sort of jumping to final thoughts. I don't mean it sounded, but I think I prefer this to the first one. I think what I would say, a double bill would go.
Yes, yeah,
I think I would rather, if I was going to see it again, I would probably rather do 1 and 2 together, because it would only be 3 hours anyway. Mm-hmm. And I think it would be an epic 3 hours sit down to do both of them. But it's one of them, I think, because as you said, the first one, it set up all the rules of the game. We knew everything we needed to know about the monsters, about the family, about the history, about what happened. And this one was building. Okay, there was something happened. We know there were meteors. Three of them. This is how it happened, and that's in the trailer. And in this one, it's okay. We've had the tragic ending of the dad. Now the family are going to need to go and move, and that's essentially the core of this film. And I think it's always harder for double parts like this when it starts where the last one finishes. I know that some films have handled it better. Some films have handled it worse. But I just thought it was so well done. I wanted to see that, what I wanted to see, the effect it had on other people. And we get a glimpse not just into Cillian Murphy. I think Scott McNairy plays a character as a part of a group of people who is like, whoa, I didn't see this coming. But I kind of love it because something like that would happen. And I'm just going to leave it at that for people to be able to see for themselves. But sort of, I don't know if I'm wrapping up, but my final thoughts, I think it was solid. And I'm very excited for people to see it at the cinema. We haven't mentioned that. Sorry, let's talk about the cinema experience. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we were very fortunate. We were at a press screening in Leicester Square, so we're not going to, we didn't have a full screen of 300, 400 people. There was probably 40, 50 people, and everyone's there because they're there to watch it for that reason. No phones and stuff like that. There was a couple of drunk people that managed to get their way in just swapping at Godzilla, but security threw them out quickly. Probably the worst one we could ask for drunk people to turn up in as well. But as far as the cinema experience goes, nailed it. On the first film on Monday, I spoke about how, I don't know if I said it in a review or to you afterwards, I was like, I could hear my sister on the phone upstairs. I could hear like parents cooking downstairs. And I was like, I'm trying to watch this film in silence. Was at that cinema the other day. I had a drink, and when you get near the bottom and the straw makes a sound, I was like, oh no. It like slowly puts drink back. And I was like, that's what I want. And on a side piece with that, it was just lovely to see not just a new film at the cinema, but a film that should be seen at a cinema.
Oh yeah,
first viewing there, and it was like, as long as the audience are with you, I think you're in for absolutely the right treat with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, when I watched the first film, I think I did watch it at night time. Curtains closed, lights off, earphones in. But I do live right next to a main road, so you still did have that constant stream of traffic. So this was invaluable to me to finally get to see at least one of these Quiet Place films in the cinema, and minus the drunk people who walked in and did ruin the opening scene for me. I will say that I was in it, I was in the moment, and then these came in, and I thought, well, oh God, these are here to stay. We always pick it. Why is it always me? But they did, swiftly go out after a couple of minutes, which was, thank God. Because if they'd have been, I would have said something. I've never said anything to anyone in the cinema before. If they're making noise, I do the very British thing and tut and turn round and sigh loudly. But I was this close to saying something, but thank God they were taken out. Not literally, but they were taken out of the screening. It was a really fun experience actually watching this film in the cinema because, of course, I have snacks, I have a drink, but you immerse yourself in that film so much. I've never opened a bottle of water as quietly and as subtly as I did in the screening for A Quiet Place Part 2. So that was really fun. And obviously the sound as well, just speaking briefly about that, Krasinski brought on the same editors and sound mixers that worked on the first film, and he said pretty much what we said, the rules of the game now, just basically do what you did on the first film. It got them an Oscar nomination, of course, but it seems like they experimented with sound more, like more completely silent moments in the film, especially when it's from the daughter's perspective, who is deaf. There's a moment where, I don't want to give it away, but I guess this isn't like a major spoiler. She loses her hearing aid at one point, and it's all from her perspective. And this is why I really wish I could see Sound of Metal in the cinema, because I imagine that experience of seeing what it must be like. It's almost like that the film is allowing you to experience what someone who is deaf would be like in that same situation. And thankfully, everyone else in the cinema screening, apart from those drunk people at the beginning, did respect the sound of the film. And you could have heard a pin drop during the whole film, which was fantastic. So I'd absolutely recommend seeing this on the big screen. Sort of like overall recommendation on the film itself. It's solid. It's a good sequel. It doesn't really tread all that new ground. If you love the first one for what it is, you're pretty much getting exactly the same thing again, which is no bad thing. You still get great performances in there. It being a direct sequel to the first one, you do have that natural lead in from the first film into this one. So if you can, I know Carl's just mentioned about a double bill, Cineworld are doing an IMAX double bill on the 30th. If you can get to a double bill, I would highly recommend that you do it, because of that natural flow straight into the sequel. And as you mentioned, George, the relatively short runtime for both films together, I think that'd be a really good experience and a really fluid experience into the second film.
I'm looking at booking it now. Sorry to be rude. They're only doing it normal, not IMAX at my one, but I might, that Sunday night, I might have a dabble. Let's change the conversation because I should be staying alive now. No, so I'm the same. I think it is that cinema experience. It's what we've been missing for so long. We got Tenet, we got classic films, and I think last week, I know we've done a video since when I said I saw Godzilla v Kong at the cinema. It was great to see that film at the cinema, but because I'd seen the film, the experience wasn't that it should have been. And what I will say again, jumping out to that, I'm so glad they changed the release date for this. They didn't need this to come out in September. This film was ready. It was in the can. Props to Paramount and John Krasinski for not selling it elsewhere as well. Paramount sold all of their films except Top Gun and Quiet Place Part 2. I have read that this one's the new 45-day streamer rule. So in America, this will go on Paramount Plus after 45 days of being at the cinema, which is cool. People get 6 weeks plus to go to the cinema, sports cinemas, and judging off that tracking, this is going to have a very interesting opening weekend. So looking forwards to that, seeing those numbers again. But I'd say round off, I absolutely loved it. I think it was the right film. We didn't need to restart cinemas with this $200 million blockbuster. Something small, precise, and intricate, I think was the perfect thing for me, and this delivered on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got me stoked for A Quiet Place Part 3. I don't know how long we're going to have to wait for it. I think there was, when I was doing the intro for this thing, I was going to say, which is the 2020 movie, because that's what it has it listed on Wikipedia. But obviously, we've had a longer wait. Whether it's 2 years, I don't know. But now they've got to 2. Just do a trilogy. It's the OCD in me. Like, you never, apart from Kill Bill, I'm trying to think of like any other film franchise that has stopped at 2 films. There's probably a whole bunch more than that. That's the only one that I can think of. Anyway, God, sorry.
I'll say let's just pretend aliens. There are many films we'd love to pretend that just had two
Terminator, Alien, anything directed by James Cameron. I mean, with Avatar, I'm pretty happy with a one and done, to be honest, not an entire saga. Anyway, different conversation for another time. That'll do it for our review on A Quiet Place Part 2. Obviously, handing over to everyone. You can't comment on your thoughts on A Quiet Place Part 2 just yet. So let us know your thoughts on the first one. If you didn't catch our review that we did on the first one, let us know what you thought of that. Are you excited for this film? What are you anticipating about this film? Please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff. This being one of them, we are getting new films now, which is always good. So we'll have more reviews coming out for all the big releases. It's kind of all things horror at the moment. We've had Spiral, which I still need to do a review on at some point. There's the new Conjuring film, The Devil Made Me Do It. This one, so they've just come out of the gate with all the horror films, and I'm here for it. I love them. So we'll have more reviews coming out on the new releases. The best way to find out when we're going live for those is on our social media. So Facebook at Cinema Savvy, Twitter at Cinema_Savvy. You can find us on Letterboxd at Cinema Savvy as well. We also have a link in the description to the TeePublic, where you can buy some of our merch as well. Obviously, running alongside this, we have our James Bond retrospective that we're doing at the moment every Tuesday at 8 p.m. And we'll be back on Tuesday, the 1st of June, with Diamonds Are Forever. It's been a really fun series that we're doing at the moment. So if you do want something other than new releases, we are going through those at the moment. So there's really something for everyone on this channel at the moment. So that's going to be us for at least the next 25 minutes, and then we'll be going live again to talk about Amazon's acquisition of MGM. So I want to thank everyone who's commented and watched with us today. Until the next stream, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.